Hello guys, we are back with the series Battleforge / Nimble versus Nomads. Okay, today, the Nomads are a very small faction, you can find it in the south, and it has cutthroats. They are kind of like Sax, although they have Backstabber and they gain dodge after day 35. So Nomads overall are more survivable than Brigands. They tend to have better armor and they have additional defense from dodge, but they have most of the time weaker weapons. We can see the Nomad Slinger has the sling, doesn't do much damage. These are kind of the lower ones. The Nomad Outlaw, they have shield walls in combination with dodge after day 40. They are really survivable. Also the Backstabber perk makes them that they will hit you at some point. They have a scimitar, or they can have a scimitar. Pole maces, the only two-handed weapon that is really scary is the pole mace that they have, and the two-handed Saif can be nasty, especially if you're nimble, because it's a two-handed cleaver, it can inflict bleed and it attacks twice. They have relatively high skill, I would say, interesting enough. The thing is, most of the time, or a lot of the times, they have weak weapons, right? I think they are more likely to have shields than the Brigands to a certain degree. They can have the battle whip, which basically means they can disarm you, but they do literally 0 damage unless you are nimble and you don't have any armor. That's actually pretty sketchy versus nimble. The three-headed flail does not do a lot of damage, actually, unless you fight them without any armor, then it can do a lot of damage. And overall, they have good armor, but they have good helmets too. That's noteworthy. They tend to have good helmets, and they always bring helmets. So they are, at least the Nomad Outlaws, they always have a helmet. Yeah, 66% chance of a shield, so much more likely to have a shield, I think, than the Brigand Raiders. The dodge, Pathfinder recover relentless, so they are relatively fast. Hard to hit opponents. Nomad Archers, they have the composite bow, which means, and Headhunter after day 60. They have the bow has one less range than the normal longbow, but it has more armor efficiency. So that means they are really, really nasty versus Nimble. And the Headhunter thing makes them also stronger versus Nimble, I would say, assuming that you have Steelbrow with Battleforge. Because the Nimble has 60% damage reduction, but with Bullseye, you actually take a shit ton of damage if you get hit in the head multiple times, because the crit bonus still applies. So if you are Nimble, you will take more hit point damage. And these things, if you are Nimble and you have relatively low armor, these things shred your armor really, really fast. So high volume of attacks with Headhunter, that means Nimble really does not like getting hit by that. And with Full Forge, you can shrug off a lot of arrows, but even with the Headhunter, they do more damage than the normal short bows from the Brigands. But the whole faction does not have throwing weapons and they don't have crossbows. So right away, in terms of ranged output, if you are Battleforge, even versus the Desert Stalkers, you can to a certain degree ignore the ranged damage. And you can always fight at night, which is the thing that I tend to do. Okay, Nomad Leaders, they have a bunch of stats, 9 lives. They are just, especially if they have shields, they are ridiculously hard to kill. And they have a chance of throwing spear or bundle of javelins, but they actually don't use it. That's kind of weird that they have these weapons in the backpack, but I know for sure they do not use these kind of weapons. So that's kind of the point. They do not use throwing weapons, the whole faction. We have the Blade Dancer, which is the Swordmaster equivalent. The Blade Dancer can have a sword lance with Overwhelm, has high defense, but only half the defense of the Swordmaster, so you can actually have a decent chance of hitting this guy, although he has Overwhelm and relatively high skill. The thing is, if you're Battleforge, again, the sword lance has bad armor efficiency and the the Saif has also bad armor efficiency, so the Shamshi, I mean. So if you have high armor, you do not care too much. If you are nimble, you care because it's still relatively high base damage. And of course, this guy will always try to AoE. So the overwhelm is annoying, especially in combination with a front line that has shield wall and this guy just overwhelming behind them. But again, if you have Battleforge armor, a lot of Battleforge armor, you can tank a lot of it before it gets into a scary territory. Nomad Executioners can have the 200 scimitar. This thing shreds Nimble. The flanked mace, the flail, the bardiche, no, the 200 hammer, the flail and the mace, they destroy Battleforge. But the bardiche and the scimitar just wreck Nimble. So again, versus this guy, this the equivalent of the Hedge Knight from the Brigand Raiders. If this guy hits you, it's gonna hurt, no matter if you are Battleforged or if you are Nimble. But Nimble is bad versus the cleavers, but better versus the hammer and the mace and the flail. Overall, don't get hit by this guy. Doesn't have a little bit less melee skill than the other guys, so being relatively fast, trying to overwhelm him, again, net them down, stab them with the knife. And that is all a good thing to control them. Try to control them before they start killing you, basically. Desert Stalkers are the Master Archers. Yeah, they are basically the archers with Headhunter. Really, really nasty. They have Katal daggers or the normal daggers, and they have mastery, so that's really, really nasty. They are a lot of the time scarier in melee than they are at range, which is kind of surprising. They have Nimble, so they are hard to kill. Yeah, but especially if you are Battleforged and they have a normal dagger, and they attack you 3 times with the step attack, ooh, you are in trouble. Like they can actually have a decent chance of killing you in melee if you are forged. Of course, if you are Nimble, you do not care too much, but if you are Nimble, you care much more about the high damage output of the short bow. Okay, overall, I would say the thing is, all of them can throw sand, and sand lowers your initiative and your damage. So a lot of the time, if you are a Nimble character, you also have dodge, and this is kind of like a major way of your defense. So the throwing sand heavily messes with the initiative and with your defense that comes from initiative. Also, they are relatively fast, so being Nimble doesn't necessarily mean that you outfast them or can outpace them. Overall, I would say Battleforge is superior versus them, versus the Nomad faction in general, because especially the archers, they don't have crossbows, they don't have throwing weapons, they just have bows, and bows have, like, they can attack twice per turn, they have an insane volume of fire. So they tend to focus on Nimble bros that are on the front line, and that's pretty nasty. Because of the high armor efficiency, they will destroy armor really fast if you are not Battleforged. And even with Battleforge, they have a decent chance of destroying your armor. So the big camps that have like 20, 30 nomads with like blade dancers, executioners, and desert stalkers, I always attack at night, even with Battleforge. You can bring Nimble, but you really have to be aware, and like frontline Nimbling versus their high volume of attacks is not necessarily the best idea. Fearsome tends to be really decent versus them, especially if they come in large numbers, because they are hard to hit. They are, because of the dodge and the shield walls and everything, they tend to be hard to hit, but they do not have the output that brigands have, because they don't have crossbows, they don't have throwing weapons, so they are, and also they don't have like one-handed cleavers and one-handed axes, so they're especially their damage output, especially from the outlaws, is relatively low compared to a brigand raider. Like, but therefore they are much more tanky. So overall, I would say roughly the same power level as brigands. These guys require more melee skill or range skill though in order to defeat them. And I would say overall, especially early on, you fight them before you have Battleforge or Nimble. But if you are Nimble, just be really mindful and really careful with your approaches. Because of the high volume of attacks, especially the archers have no problem shredding your Nimble armor in like one turn and actually focus firing you down and killing you if you are Nimble. So be really careful, mindful with your approaches. And again, if you can, be Battleforged and have a lot of armor. That fixes a lot of the damage output, or that can help you avoid a huge amount of damage output that these guys have, especially in the giant late game camps. And you want to find the giant late camps and fight them because they have high chance of fames. Okay, yeah, this is it for the Nomad faction. If you are a new player, maybe you learned something. If not, I hope you found it at least entertaining. If you did so, please like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.